guys, welcome to Boots and Bounty Homestead. My name is Casey with a K, K-A-C-Y. Just so I don't get confused with Casey with Ormsby Farms, who is putting on this collaboration for Homesteading 101. We were asked to come and provide some information for all of you guys in this collaboration, along with these other channels. I'll give you a second to look over them. It's going to take a minute, because there's 12 of us. This is a great time for us to come together as a community and share our information with you guys. Go ahead and like and subscribe to each one of those channels, and if you need to go back and rewind it to write them all down, you can. But there will also be a playlist. Just click on the hashtag below, hashtag Homestead 101, and it will take you to the playlist link that will show you all of the videos from this collaboration. In that playlist, you will be able to easily go through each of the videos and to learn about each of the subjects that the channels are providing for you guys. There is also a beginner's homesteading guide group on Facebook, and we will have all these links to the playlist and to Facebook and to all the channels listed below in the description, so you can easily navigate through this collaboration. For my collaboration, I was asked to do preservation, your food preservation, and which one is best. But that's all going to determine on the information I give you, and for you to decide which would be best for your family, or any multiple choosings of the different preservation methods. So let's go inside, and I'm going to talk to you about each of these preservation methods that are available to you today, to start right now. So welcome into Casey's Kitchen. This is where you'll see a lot of my cooking videos done. We're going to jump into different categories and titles, if you will. So when you first learn or first heard of food preservation, one of the first things that probably popped into your mind was your grandmother's canner or water bather. Those glass jars that stores all that wonderful food that you may or may not have grown up on, but you definitely heard of it here recently. So a couple of the ways that you can preserve food in jars is by either using a water bath canner or a pressure canner. Both of these methods are used for certain vegetables or fruits. To know the difference, of course, you can always reference any kind of ball book, recipe book. And we say ball because they are FDA approved. They have been through years and years and years of trials and errors and getting the recipe just right to follow safety guidelines. But there are rebel canners out there, and that is fine too. You can be a rebel canner too if you like, just as long as you make sure it's safe. So with water bath canning, just to give you an idea of what goes where, water bath canning is done in order to heat and semi-cook the food that you are preserving, but it is for high acidity foods such as your tomatoes, tomato recipes, because of the tomato having the high acidity that it needs to be water bath. Most of your fruits and like your jams and jellies and such, because you put lemon juice in the low acidity recipes, or in like your oranges and such that have a higher acidity content, you don't have to put the lemon juice and stuff like that. But follow the recipe that you have been given for whatever you are water bathing. But you wouldn't water bath like green beans, regular beans, greens, such like that, because they don't have the acidity in them. And you wouldn't want to put lemon juice in them to make them acidic. That would just be kind of gross. Anyways, back to this. So for the pressure canner, that's going to be for most of your beans and your low acidity vegetables. With the water bath canner too, let me go back to that. With the water bath canner, that's going to be like your vinegars, your lemon juices, and such, like your pickles. You're going to make pickles with the vinegar. That would be a water bath thing. Jams and jellies with fruits and stuff that has lemon juice in it. anything that would have apple cider vinegar in it. That's going to be your water bath. The pressure canner is going to go for your green beans, any kind of shelled beans, any kind of whole beans, any kind of vegetable that is just low acidic. And meats. You have to pressure can your meats. Whenever you cook like ground beef or stew meat or deer or fish or anything like that, all of that has to be pressure canned. You cannot water bath it due to safety regulations, and we don't want to make your family sick, so I'm not going to lead you astray. With that in mind, that is a starter on which is what, okay? Now, to choose a water bath canner, there are big ones, there are small ones. It doesn't matter. Whichever your family quantity requires, that would be what you get. Now make sure in both of these, the water bath and the pressure canner, you've always got to have something in the bottom. This is the rack that would go in it, like this right here, and it would hold your jars. Or if you don't have one of these, you can always put one of these discs in there, and this is actually out of my pressure canner. But the fun thing about it is, if you don't want to purchase both of them, just get a pressure canner. Because, you know, if you're a water bath soloist, that is it. That's all you're going to use. That's perfect. But if you are going to do both, go ahead and get a pressure canner. Because all you got to do is take the top off, and then you have a water bath canner. So save your money and just get one. Now with the pressure canner, what it does is it builds pressure up inside of this. And there is a weight here. And this weight, what pound of weight you use is per the elevation and per the food. Now where I'm at in 7B in West Tennessee, we are under 1,000 feet of elevation. So just about everything, I don't think I've ever used anything but 10 pounds. It doesn't change for what you are cooking or what you have in there, unless it's something outside of a jar. Now, if you are, if you throw a whole chicken in here, you may only want to use 5 pounds of pressure. But that's different than canning. So from your elevation, it's going to tell you what poundage to put on here. And if you're above 1,000 feet elevation, sea level, then you'll go up to 15 pounds. But like I said, make sure to follow the guidelines that you are using in your recipe. So what that does is the pounds of pressure is per square inch, like PSI. And what's that doing is it's forcing the pressure of the heat and the water to cook the vegetables in your jar. So as it cooks, it forces everything to kind of boil, and it pushes up. So after it's done and you take it out, as it settles and cools off, it's going to decompress, and that's what pulls that lid down to create your seal, as well as the water bath canner. But with pressure canning, you've got to heat it up very intensely and cook it for a long time with the heat being forced into your jars in order to kill all the bacteria. Because basically that's all you're doing, is heating it up to kill bacteria, creating enough of a seal on your jars. That way when it cools, it's going to pull that top down, and it's going to create that vacuum seal. I hope that's enough information for you to get started on determining if you would like to do any one of these categories of food preservation. Now, let's move on to the next one. So the next preservation method you have probably heard of is dehydration. What's so special about this one, though, is that you don't really have to have any equipment. I've got 2 examples here of dehydrators. You can have some with thermostats or temperature gauges. You can have some that just turn on and run. And that is all up to your preference, because you've got to keep an eye on what you are dehydrating in them to make sure that they, get completely dry and don't burn. Because some do get hot enough that they will kind of scorch whatever you are dehydrating, especially thin items like herbs and such. But you don't have to have a dehydrator. That's the good part about dehydration, is that for your herbs and flowers, yes, beautiful, pretty flowers, not flowers that you make bread with, but your medicinals, your pretty items, things like that, all you need is just like to lay a sheet down and pour your items out on the sheet. Just that way you can make sure that there's airflow around it. And in a few days, everything will be dry. Let me also show you one way that I dry some of my herbs and flowers in a kind of decorative way. One way I like to have fun with my herbs is make herb curtains. And you can do this all sorts of ways. I used to use the big fat alligator clips that you can buy, like binder clips. You can use those and put tacks up and just clip the little binder clips to it, hang it. Or you can use string, and as you see up here, these are actually shower curtain clips, to where you can clip these on your shower curtains or just regular curtains. And all I did was tie them to some string and just attached them up there. You can use anything as long as it hangs and ties them up. Just let them be pretty for you and dry, and then you can just take them down and store them in glass jars or plastic bags until you get ready to use them. Speaking of drying your herbs, that leads me into another really cool preservation method you probably didn't think of. Now, once you dry your herbs or flowers, you can use them in making salts, flavored cooking salts, bath salts, whatever kind of salt. And it will flavor your salt and preserve the herbs as well. You can also put them in butters or oils for cooking or medicinals. So your imagination can be limitless on how to use your herbs and your dried flowers. So after all of your herbs are dry, I like to take them off the stem so they are ready to be used. You can store these in large jars like this. Make sure you put a label on them, because everything green kind of tends to look alike once it's dried. Or you can put them in bags, as long as you label them so you'll know exactly what it is. Then you can also store your pretty flower petals. Any of your dried flowers, make sure you label them and put a top on it as soon as they're dry. We want to put a top on it so the dust doesn't get in there. Or you can cover them with paper towels, rubber bands. Just make sure you label these. And these are some dried mullein flowers. I like to store these up and use them in my tinctures and salves for later. So, now that we've talked about dehydrated foods, that will lead into my next two preservation methods. Once your foods are dehydrated, such as these beans, which you also want to keep on hand, dried beans, because you can plant them if there's hard times. You can take your dried items and place them in jars and use a vacuum sealer. So for vacuum sealing, you have wide mouth attachments and regular mouth attachments. You will attach this to your vacuum sealer, attach it to your jar, and then you'll simply press the seal button. Follow your manufacturer's vacuum seal directions and find the attachments that fit your vacuum sealer. If you don't want to do jars, then that leads me into my next method of preservation. So also pertaining to your dried items and the vacuum sealer, you can also use the bags that come with the vacuum sealer in rolls, so you can make your own bags, in pre-made bags, or they also have these pre-made Ziploc storage bags. All of these will be totally up to you, your preference, and the items that you are vacuum sealing. You can store fresh meats and vegetables in your vacuum sealed bags. You can use your vacuum sealer for storing your dehydrated foods. Then the next preservation method is, once you get your vacuum sealed products in the appropriate bag, get them vacuum sealed, then you can throw them in the freezer. So the freezer is the next preservation method. So freezers come in all shapes, sizes, forms, and fashions. Any color, stand up, lay down, refrigerator, freezer types, apartment types, whatever you guys need. You can find freezers. Fingers crossed. But we have ours outside in our garage. We have one that's called a deep freeze, which is a chest freezer. You can also have the freezer on the refrigerator you bought. You can have little small stand-up freezers, or you can have bigger stand-up freezers. So here I have my big stand-up freezer, which I like to keep my meats in and some vegetables or fruits that I'm going to be processing for later. Because let's get real, we don't all have time to get everything processed in a timely fashion. So what I like to do is freeze my items to preserve later. So what I mean by that is all of those peaches I put up, I didn't have time to get them exactly in the recipes that I wanted them to be. So what I did was store them in freezer bags, put them in the freezer, and then this winter or fall, whenever I have a little extra time and the garden has calmed down, then I can use those frozen items to go ahead and preserve and put in jams and jellies and all kinds of yummy recipes to go in the pantry. I like the stand-up freezer because it does make it easier to access, because we all know things get lost in the bottom of these chest freezers. So in this chest freezer, we like to put a lot of our mass items. Like if we need to freeze flour, or if we have a large corn haul or something like that, corn on the cob, we like to put in here. Our broccoli, which comes in all at one time, and we don't can broccoli or can corn. We like to leave it on the cob. The stuff that's going to be in here a while in the big hauls is what we like to put in the chest freezer. We can line it up, stack it up, front to back, top to bottom. Whatever, however we need to put it in here. That's how we like to use our chest freezer. And then our refrigerator freezer inside is what we like to keep our everyday things in, such as our ice and our grab and go breakfast, and like our peanuts, pecans, different items like that. That's kind of small amounts that I just need to grab and go kind of thing. That's what we keep in our small freezers. So moving right along, this next food preservation is for eggs. This is called Waterglassed Eggs. Sorry, my light's kind of bad in here. So what this is a preservation for fresh eggs. This uses, for every 1 quart of water, you use 1 weighted ounce, that's per scale, of pickling lime or hydrated lime. Not gardening lime, but pickling lime. You mix 1 quart to 1 ounce in a jar. Now I believe I did 3 and 3 in here. 3 quarts of water to 3 ounces of hydrated lime. And I could get 2 dozen eggs in this 1 gallon jug. I did these last May. Let's see, I did them mid-May, and there's 2 dozen eggs in here. These will last from anywhere between 8 months and 2 years. So in the fall, after your chickens molt and through the winter before it gets too cold, you may start to have an abundance of eggs. This is a good time for you to go ahead and start water glassing some eggs for during the winter time or the scorching summer when your eggs have slowed down, and especially during molting season. The same day eggs are best to use with water glassing. Now, whenever I did these eggs were actually 2 weeks old, and I'm fixing to do a video on cracking these and trying them out just on video. We have used a couple of these before and they were just fine, but I'll show you guys in that video coming up about these water glassed eggs. So for the sake of information, fresh eggs are best to use water glassing. And whenever you store eggs, you want to make sure that they are stored with the rounded side up, point side down. That way there is less air up here where the yolk is going to be. It's more spread out, so it'll be flatter. And they also say to put those the same way in the jar. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that or not. It's kind of hard to make them stand with the pointed side down in the water glass jar. So that to me is not a necessity, but for informational purposes, I'm just throwing that out there. And so these just sit here and just stay preserved. Do not wash them. Straight out of the coop, clean eggs, go straight in the jar. Do not wash them or anything. If they have dirt on them, it's best to leave them out and go ahead and use them for other things. Unwashed clean eggs, same day, water glassing 1 quart to 1 ounce of lime. So, if you have any questions, follow up with my video on that I've got coming up soon, because we have a few that we are going to water glass together. Moving right along. The very next method of preservation that I personally do are ferments. Now, ferments is where you grow the good bacteria on your food that is already present when you pull it out of the ground. So whenever you are attempting to do your fermentations, make sure that you just rinse your vegetables off, scrub a little bit, but not too much, and don't use any kind of wash or antibacterial soap, because it's going to wash all the germs off, because that's what it's intended to do. So as we are pulling our foods out of our gardens, we are simply washing the dirt off and putting them in a brine of sorts. Most of the time, it's either the brine that they create with a little help from salt, such as sauerkraut. All of this is shredded up cabbage, which was pounded out with some salt, shoved in a jar, squished down. It created its own water, and then fermented for about 2 weeks, which creates sauerkraut. Fermented foods are good for your digestion tract and for your GI health, for your gut health, which in turn help your immune system. And also helps to fight off certain illnesses, diseases, colds, flus, that kind of thing. So, fermented sauerkraut, and I'm not talking about the sauerkraut you buy at the store. This is fermented sauerkraut. That sauerkraut went through the same process, only it was cooked or packaged or processed in a way that killed all the bacteria. So it does not have any live cultures in it. Now you can do this with any kind of vegetable. Broccoli would be one of those things that you either liked or you didn't. And we haven't found that we can successfully do broccoli. One of our favorites is radishes. And I just completed this jar last week. We've already been eating out of it. Now radishes do lose their color whenever they are fermented. But you can also, you can do any of these vegetables back here. You can do carrots and peas and whatever you would like. Asparagus is a good one. Any kind of fermentation. So just dig into it and see what you can find, what your family likes, because fermentations I have seen, you either like them or you don't. And you can either force yourself to eat them or you can do it and then they just sit there and you end up not eating them. So do some research. Start with a beginner recipe, which I suggest radishes. These don't taste like fresh radishes if you do not like raw radishes, okay? So try it out. See if you like it. The worst thing that you've done is, maybe lost a few days and a couple of dollars on a vegetable, or a fresh vegetable that you had in the garden, or a couple of dollars on a bought vegetable. Then you'll know. Another fermentation, that's a drink. It's not a food. This is called kombucha, and it's fermented tea, and this is made to also help with your GI tract. This is also a good way to use up some of those fresh fruits that you have coming in to flavor it, or if you make juice out of some of those fresh vegetables or out of some of the fresh fruits, such as our peach juice we have here. We can pour this fresh peach juice that we have already canned into our kombucha to flavor it as a peach tea. And this is great for the summertime. It's not a preservation method, but it is part of the fermentation process. That's why I wanted you guys to know about kombuchas. And also, I have a video series going on right now where we are actually making kombucha. So all of those items are preservation methods that we do perform here in our household that we have found works best for us. I also wanted to go over some preservation methods that may be a lost art, maybe you have never heard of, maybe you've heard of it, never done it, never tried it, that kind of thing, but it's still a preservation method. And these are methods that were used hundreds of years ago, because that refrigerator in there hasn't always been around. So, what I wanted to go over with you guys, since we just talked about the fermentation, you can also do a pickling method, which is 2 parts vinegar, 1 part water, any spices you want. And you can either do what's called a hot pack or a kettle pack, to where you have hot jars. You put your fresh vegetables in it, already cut up, processed however you're going to intake those. And you are heating up a brine, which the brine is the 2 parts vinegar, 1 part water, and whatever spices you're going to use. You pour that into the vegetables, into the jars, put your lids on, tighten it down finger tight, and they will seal themselves. That's a form of pickling where you don't have to water bath or pressure can at this point. One other thing that I thought was really neat, and I may try here shortly, is what they call salt or sugar curing meats. That'll be the most prevalent that I'm sure you've heard of. But you can also salt cure or sugar cure egg yolks, which I thought was really neat. And you can shred it up like cheese on your salads or on any kind of recipes that you may come across. You can smoke meats, where they hang and cure meats over just a real low fire, usually in smokehouses or in the ground. That's a way to preserve some meat whenever you don't have a refrigerator or freezer. And then we come to root cellaring. You may not think of this as a preservation method, but if you have a root cellar, or like we use underneath our house in the crawl space, it stays cool to where you can store your root vegetables, your potatoes, your carrots, your turnips, parsnips, radishes. You can store those kind of things in a root cellar, as well as the jars from the pantry. You can store those in a root cellar as well. But a root cellar keeps the atmosphere at a decent humidity and a low temperature, to where it's going to preserve your vegetables, especially your root vegetables, where they don't sprout, where they don't go soft, where they don't go bad before you can eat them. It does extend their life. Not for very long, but it does extend their life. And the last method I don't currently have is a freeze dryer. Now, some of you guys may have a freeze dryer, and that would be awesome to have. So that is also a preservation method that you can do with pretty much any. You can do sauces, you can do eggs, you can do vegetables and fruits, and you can even do candy. I've seen some people freeze dry candy. But that will last up to 25 years, if not a lifetime. So that would be, if you're going to invest in something, that would be a wise choice to invest in, is a freeze dryer. Alright guys, so there is my video contribution to this collaboration on food preservation and which is best. Well, I can't tell you which is best because this is my house and not yours. And you have to figure out which one is best for you. So go back and review each of these methods, see which ones fit your household, your garden, your family, your taste, your likes, even your storage, because storage has a lot to do with it. So decide which one is best for you and go for it. Follow any of these channels that are on this collaboration. They'll be able to guide you into how to do the ones that you choose to do your family. Don't forget to like and subscribe to each of the channels that I listed at the beginning and down in the description. Follow us on the Facebook page and go on there this afternoon. If you're watching this come out on the day of the publication, it'll be October 13th. You can go to the Facebook page at about 4 o'clock, and Casey from Ormsby Farms is going to be on there to help anyone find any of these videos and to answer any questions that you have. And of course, you can personally reach out to any of us on these channels if you have any questions about any one of the topics that are explained here in this playlist. I hope you enjoy. Please go check out all these channels and stop back by to see what other information you can learn from all of us. Until next time, guys, bye.